share. We'll check the YouTube just to make sure we're live. Okay, seems like we are live. Participants. Hey, good morning, Ankur. How are you?
Morning, Aaron. Doing good. How are you?
Doing well, brother. So I I don't know if anybody is live and watching, but let's continue our discussion. And if anybody is watching later, they can watch the live stream recording.
Welcome, everyone.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So today we wanted to have a working session on OTBI. I know a lot of you guys may have worked on OTBI, and some of you may be new to OTBI, and some want to learn more about OTBI. So in this session, we wanted to walk you through one of the sample scenarios where we will build a pretty simple analysis. And so it'll have drill down and drill through capabilities, and we will show you how to do that. And Ankur is going to show you about the subject area, more details about the subject area and what a subject area means and how the subject area is built. So behind the scenes, it's called as an RPD. We don't have access to it. Obviously, Oracle creates the RPD. It's available for you to use. So Ankur is going to dive into a little more detail on RPDs and how that is built. And then once that is done, we will go into creating the analysis that we're going to do today. So Ankur, I'll leave it up to you. So take it over.
Thanks, Aaron. You need to make me the host, I believe. Can't see your screen. Okay. Let me know if you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Okay, sounds good. So as Arun mentioned, the OTBI, we'll take a step back to OTBI. So there was an original product called OBI EE, and that's the, I would say, the parent of the OTBI toolset. So as Oracle Cloud has grown over the last period of 5 to 10 years, or more than that, the Oracle has consolidated a lot of its product set into the cloud services. So OBI being the analytics platform, and that was merged also or brought into in the Fusion or in the cloud world as a reporting platform. So with that, anything cloud, as you know, for a lot of developers, we lose a lot of access. So the today's topic, the OTBI, what we are talking is to give you an overview of how things works in behind the scenes and how OBI used to work. So essentially, as a OTBI developer, when you're creating some new analysis, and for those who are from the previous technology, the answers, both are the same thing. Essentially, an analysis is an ad hoc report we are creating. So for those, we need something called subject areas. So in here, you can see a list of subject areas. So I have on my screen a RPD from back, what is a product used to be called as BI applications. So it was a prepackaged solution from Oracle, which comes with its own data warehouse, as well as it has the capabilities of all the OBIE platform to connect to, say, your custom applications, any databases, and allows you to build your own reporting on the same platform. So today I'll be quickly giving an overview of how that works, and then how OTBI leverages it in behind the scenes. So if first thing you do is select a subject area. So what is a subject area is essentially a logical grouping of defined set of data. So in this example, in this screen, you will see three areas: presentation, business model, and the physical is actually where the data is stored in the Excel form. Business modeling is where we use to create logics and any kind of integration in terms of aggregation tables or any calculations we need to do, those kind of things, any derivation of columns, those pieces. And the presentation layer is what we want our end user to see. So like most of the times from behind the scenes, the table names, the column names, the calculations may not be as user-friendly names that they would like to see, because again, as an ad hoc platform where you are doing click and get the field in there, you like to have users using the very user-friendly name. So as you can see on the left-hand side, on the presentation layer is what it is. You are creating your subject areas, how the end user will see. And in OTBI, this is exactly what you see on the OTBI subject areas. So as I mentioned, we do not have access to the OTBI repository, but the concepts remains the same. So essentially behind the scenes, there is a repository in there that is connected. So for example, if I just bring up one subject area, you will see, sorry, let me go back. Sorry for the latency. So in a subject area, you will have a list of dimensions, and then there is a fact, right? So it is possible for you to have a fact, more than one facts in same subject area. So it depends on the business needs, you have those. So this one is for the GL detailed transactions, which is something similar to your GL transaction real-time subject area. So again, this is not exact the same. This is 5 years older than what is today. But the idea behind the scenes remain the same. So for a fact perspective, you can come here, query a related logical table or related physical table. So that's one thing. And then again, in the on-prem world, we used to be able to come here and modify, rename things for more simplicity. And as you guys can see, segment 1 to 10, now in cloud, you will be able to do, I think, up to 30 segments. And then Oracle takes care of with certain processes. If you run, it will go and change the OTBI presentation layer name from segment 1 to whatever your company or account number or natural account you have. So there are a lot of changes has happened, but architecturally the things are same. So for example, if I'm looking at one of the subject area, all the dimensions and the facts, I can look at my transaction amount, my credit amount, my debit amount by any of these criterias. And then if I need to see how it is created, right? So I'll go to the next layer, which is my fact on the business modeling layer. So as I mentioned earlier, this is where most of the logic is done. So I'll just expand this to show you a little bit more details about it. So when I expand it, you will see something called sources. Sources is basically where this data is coming from. So now this is where the interesting part or the power of OTBI or OBI comes in, is like for all these three columns, you can get this data from different places. So as I mentioned, BI apps was a warehouse-based tool. So you have the core data in the underscore F table, which is a fact table, but you can also possibly have aggregation tables. So like in this, you have aggregation by group accounts and group account by fiscal periods. So now if end user on the OTBI or OBI side is able to select certain data fields based on what columns they are selecting, they will be able to get data aggregated quickly. So the goal of having the aggregation is to return data as fast as possible. So these are done in the warehousing terms, pre-calculated. and then at reporting time, your time for calculations is reduced, right? So this is basically how a fact and dimensions work. So I'll quickly show you another thing, which is pretty cool in the sense, like, because once you are working with hundreds of tables, you'll get clues where it is. So now here you can see the Oracle standard design. So in the center, you will see the fact, and all around it, all these one-offs are basically dimensions. So as you might have heard, this terminology is the star schema. So this is Oracle star schema for the GL transaction fact, right? So, and the other thing is, so for example, if I take one of these subject areas or joins, you can even also look at what is the relationship on those fields. Okay. Moving back. Apologies, it seems like it's getting delayed or stuck for some reason. Okay. I think there's some technical challenge here. It's frozen on my end.
Yeah, that's okay. We can talk about it. So what Ankur provided is an overview of the RPD itself. Now, when it comes to the OTBI subject areas, the RPD is maintained by Oracle. We don't have access to this RPD. So, any columns or any facts and dimensions and attributes that you see in the subject area is maintained by Oracle. So it's good to have this understanding of an RPD. Ankur, if you want to add anything else regarding an RPD, we can, and then we can dive into
Yes,
the live session.
Yes, so I would say, so essentially the behind the scenes, this is how the structure of the data is as Oracle releases new features, new subject areas, they keep on enhancing this model. And then as the new data fields request goes to Oracle, they also enhance or fix those bugs. So with cloud, we are restricted to creating our own custom ones. For that, we use BI Publisher. But I think from a architecture perspective, that's pretty much I wanted to share today.
Okay, awesome. All right, so if you are watching, if you have questions, please feel free to use chat to ask any questions to me or Ankur. So let's dive in and do a example analysis. And if you have watched any of my videos, you know that I like the payable subject area. So I'm going to use that as an example. So payables, invoices, transactions, real time. But this example, whatever I'm doing, the steps, this can be used for any subject area. So the steps remains the same. It's just different subject area, different analysis. So let me share my screen if I'm not sharing. Okay, here you go. All right, so I'm going to use the payables, invoices, transactions, real-time subject area. And so you can see in the subject area, you have certain folders. Ankur may be able to give a more accurate description of what these are, like facts and dimensions and attributes, Ankur, if you want to.
Yes, so any folder that you see which has like numbers in it, generally they are coming out of facts tables, and anything that you can use for defining a criteria. So if I'm looking at an amount by a criteria, amount could be invoice amount, it could be sales amount, it could be total balances or anything, any number side of it. And then criteria could be by entities, could be by segments of chart of counts, could be by companies, could be any other criteria. So essentially, as I showed you in the RPD side of it, behind the scenes, that's how the architectural is done. Like we create a facts where the numbers realize, and then on the data warehouse side, you will have dimensions and linking them together. But from a user perspective, they don't need to see all those complexity. They simply go and here select the fields that they need, and then you'll be able to get to the data. So one challenge that happens is because as you saw in the star diagram, there only data that is connected to the fact will be coming through. So in one of scenarios where there are some data elements which are not defined by Oracle in the seeded folders here, that means they are not in the current dimensions folder that are available, then you might have to sometimes go get data from more than one subject area. And I believe Arun had done a video earlier on that topic, so you can go back and look at that. And if you have questions on those concepts, we can always have another session to talk about that.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Anko. So, all right. So this is subject area, payables, invoices, transactions, real time. These are all the information that is available in this subject area. So the idea is when you're looking at invoices, payables, invoices, the idea is all of the information pertaining to that business object, in this case, invoices, should be in this subject here. So you don't have to necessarily use another subject here. The idea is everything should be here. If something is not here, that's the only time when you want to go and use another subject area to join with the subject area to get additional details. All right, so let's go ahead and create this analysis. So we're going to do two analysis, one summary analysis and one detailed analysis. So let me go ahead and, so you do have the search option here. So if you know the attribute, so in this case, if I want to search for invoice number and search for that here, this takes, sometimes it's pretty fast, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to come up with the search. Yeah, I generally just navigate to the folder and just select the field. Now you have to know which folder you have to go to. That comes with experience, I guess. All right, so you can see that, based on the search, it just retrieves that information for you. So this is the one that I want, and I'll use that. So let's go ahead and select a few more fields. So invoice number, maybe invoice date, invoice description, invoice type. Then we're going to take the supplier or supplier party name. I think that's all I need. So I'm going to move. So let's go ahead and check the results tab. So this is all the columns that you have selected, and this is the filters. We can add filters later, but just to see what information we have on the screen. Okay, you know what? Let me select the invoice amount as well. All right.
So while on this page, I'll call out one quick thing. So as you saw, the invoice amount is coming from a fact, and how can I tell is look at the icons next to it. The dimensions have a different icon, and then any of the facts fields, they have a different icon. So
Right.
just call that out.
Good.
Like where now.
Yeah. All right. So that's all the information that I need. So once you have selected these columns, it's a good idea to just go to the results tab and make sure you're seeing the information. All right, so you can see that it has retrieved all the information. At this point, I might as well save it. So custom. All right, so let's call it detail. You can provide a description if you want to, not mandatory field. All right. So you can see, you have invoice number, date, description, invoice type, supplier, and invoice amount, and the invoice amount paid. Now, there's a few things that I want to do. So I want to move the supplier or party name as the first field, because that's what I want to see as the first field. So I can just drag and drop that to the left. Now you can see that everything is grouped by supplier. So this A1 juice supplier has all these invoices and the invoice date and the necessary description, the invoice type, amount, invoice paid, etc., etc. All this information has been displayed. Now, there are a few options here. I believe if I go into edit view, maybe that was not right. All right, you can include a table prompt. sections, you can have different sections based on certain information. So I don't know, maybe supplier name, I guess. Oh, okay. So maybe table prompt. Yeah. So as you can see, you can put the field in the table prompt, and it basically allows you to select the supplier, and based on that, it will refresh the data that you see here. So quick example, I don't want that. I'm going to put it back into one. All right, done. The other thing was on the view properties. So here you can see that there's a horizontal scroll bar. If you don't want to see that, I think the moment I enable alternate styling, you can see that the rows changes, it changes colors. And then I believe, what's this one? Right. So the moment I enabled content paging, data viewing option, content paging, and paging controls, you can see that the scroll bar has gone. So Ankur, I don't know if there is any other way to auto size the content and eliminate that horizontal scroll bar. This is what I generally use. And you can see that at the bottom is the navigation option. So it just shows you the first 50 rows, and then you have the option to navigate to the next 50.
Yeah, that's the right options. I use them all the time. Only thing I would call out is based on what is your intended target for this analysis. So if you are planning to put this on a dashboard, then based on the space or how many other reports you will be putting on there, you can fine control like how many records to be shown. The width on the goal would be the end user should not scroll too much and just do paging. Again, scrolling takes time and it takes away the context. Other thing you can do is if there is a need, you can have that page prompt, and that is generally used if you have a lot of data and then you want to focus on one point at a time. So both options that Arun showed are great options, and I use them a lot.
Okay, so I think we have a question. So the question is, what are the items in the subject area? Are they ERP tables? And the second question is, can we integrate EPM? So I'll have Ankur talk about the items on the subject area, but we cannot integrate EPM. We cannot pull in data from EPM into the subject area. So it's a different system. It's a different application. And this is standard out-of-the-box subject areas that Oracle has provided for ERP and its CM and supply chain. So, Ankur, you can take the first question, which is, what are the items in the subject area? Are they ERP tables?
So they are not directly on the ERP tables. Yes, on the real-time subject areas behind the scenes, it eventually, because there is no data warehouse, real-time means it is hitting the core tables itself. So you will be hitting, like say, GL balance table for GL information or AP invoices table. But how that happens, that process is a little bit more evolved. So maybe I can share my screen again, Arun, and I can show that, please.
Sure.
So on the Fusion side, in the architecture perspective, they use something called a view object. So if you are familiar with BICC, a BI Cloud Connector, you'll have seen those earlier. Let me share my screen. Okay. So in here, as you asked, like, what is the source for it? Again, this RPD we do not have access to, but luckily in this version of the RPD back in the time, Oracle did have the Fusion objects. So for example, if I go to the financial side, so there is a connection that goes to the something similar to BI apps side of it, but it goes as an ADF connection. So that's the application development framework. So there is no direct table. So you can think it of this This is an encapsulating view. So if you are coming from Oracle database background, so your understanding of a view is basically a defined SQL, right? So similarly, on the Java side, they have in the ADF something called application module and controllers. I'm not an expert on that, but the idea here is, again, you are defining a set of a logical SQL behind the scenes, and those are what basically this is used. So all the real-time subject areas, though we don't have it, they are from a physical layer perspective, they are using the PVOs. So I'll show you an example of that. So let's take general line. Okay. So if I look at the fields, similarly, all these fields from the tables will be there, but the source is the architecture is the application module, and in the end you have the PVO. So this PVO is basically a ADF object that contains internally the SQL, and those SQL defines what exact tables it will be hitting. So because in the repository side, you will not have that information, or even we don't have access to repository. But the idea here is, if you are familiar with BICC, there Oracle have published a list of PVOs that we leverage to extract data from cloud and say bulk export into some other repository if needed. So to answer your questions, all the fields that are in the table, core tables, they are published in the real-time subject area via the PVOs. So if they are existing in PVOs and not in the say presentation layer for end users, Oracle probably will have an enhancement and then bring it forward. But if they are not even there in the PVOs in the ADF side, then they probably have to create something new. So that takes time because again, in terms of not technology limitations, but more of like making sure that all the checks and balances are done. And the other question you asked about S-base, yes, in cloud we cannot do that. In on-prem world, we were able to extract an S-base cube. So S-base cube runs behind the scene on MDX queries. So instead of SQL queries, you can use MDX, and OBI platform has the capabilities to issue those. And then as you can see, I have a custom S-base cube imported here. So you can see all your dimensions and facts coming from there. And then you can even also have reporting enabled on those. So the OBI EE platform had that capability where you can even bring S-base cubes, and there has to be specific type of them, like I think ASO cubes. And then you define the dimensionalities and those things on it. And then you are able to report just as what you are doing in analysis side of it. You can do that on the here, because again, I'm publishing this as a normal folder that you see in there. So it was possible, but probably in future versions, Oracle will enhance it to make it happen. Other thing I would call out would be is in today's world in the cloud, the current, there is a subject area, I think GL balances, I believe if I'm not wrong, real time, that actually internally use the cube on the ERP side, and that is still published as a OTBI subject area. So there are two subject area for GL side. One is for which goes through a relational side, and the other one hits the S-base cube. So both are possible from a technology perspective, but I think limited from Oracle what is available today. Any follow-up questions on this, Arun?
Yeah, there's a question. Do we get access to these subject areas directly from any Oracle service like PaaS, OIC, ODI, or Analytics Cloud?
I believe for only the OAC side, you have access to the repository. So you can, especially for the clients who are like moving from legacy BI apps to a PaaS solution, you could have, you can deploy your existing RPDs there. And then you can technically create, there are two models. One is the RPD model that you can create your own custom model and upload the RPDs. And then the other one is just like a web-based modeling tool is also there. So on certain product set, I would say not at this level of details, but yeah, for custom OAC, you can definitely do that.
You still don't have access to The RPD itself, the RPD itself, right? You'll have access to the subject area, but not the RPD.
For which product we're talking about?
So if I'm using, let's say, Fusion Analytics Warehouse, if I'm using Fusion Analytics Warehouse, I can connect to, let's say, HCM subject area or financial subject area, but I'm only connecting subject area. I don't have access to the RPD itself. I cannot make any modifications or changes.
I believe so. That's correct. The only thing you can do is on the web-based model, you can extend the dimensions.
Right.
I have not worked on that yet, but I believe that's the case. The Fusion Analytical Warehouse is basically the BI apps in cloud with black box approach. So you get the final presentation layer again, and then some modeling capabilities on the web-based platform. If you are looking for the admin tool or the RPD development itself, I think that's only possible in custom OAC.
Okay, that makes sense. I think BICC also, I mean, when we use BICC, it connects to the subject area and use the views, right? Yeah.
It connects to the views, which is also used by the repository, but those are the base objects where the data access is granted through. So there are core tables, application table where the data stores. How we access it, or Oracle accesses even in the forms and EDF side is via the views. So that is the common area, whether it is going through BICC or the application forms or through the RPD, and the views are the source to get to the tables. There is no way to access directly, even the views or the, in my understanding, the tables.
Cool. All right, I think that gives some idea about the items that you see in the subject area. So basically, if you're using EPM service, like planning or FCCS, whatever those applications are, you cannot bring those fields into the OTBI subject area. This is out of the box provided by Oracle, so no customizations are possible. So Deepak, he's a friend of mine. He has a question. Could you explain the process of adding any additional attributes like DFF into subject areas?
So in the ERP world or in that same cloud, so there are standard processes that you run. I think it is called something extending OTBI, Oracle Transaction Business Intelligence. So those so first you have to configure your DFFs in the application itself, and certain DFFs you can choose to, or you can choose for all DFFs. There is a checkbox called BI enabled. So that basically is the trigger for Oracle to pick that BI and then run the process behind the scenes and update the repository. So you run the standard process. It will take your DFF updates, anything metadata behind the scenes, and then your presentation layer will reflect those new DFFs.
Yeah, so there's a standard process available for that. So if it's a DFF, that is possible, but you cannot go in and add any other additional attributes or custom attributes into the subject area. All right, I will share. Okay, so we were just looking at the detailed analysis, and you can also have calculated columns. So here, all of these are standard columns that I picked from these folders, but you can also have calculated columns, which could be like, okay, if you want to see how much amount is pending, I could have a calculated column, which is like invoice amount minus invoice amount paid. So those things are possible. Now let me go back to the criteria. So here you can add criteria. So let's say you want to see, I don't know, any invoices that are greater than $1,000. So, I can go to the gear icon or the options icon, then click on the filter, and I can say it's greater than $1,000. So now when the results are retrieved, it will only show you data where the invoice amount is greater than $1,000. So again, it's pretty easy for you to create an analysis, and you saw that I created this in maybe less than 2 minutes. So it's very powerful not only to create simple analysis like this, but you can also create pretty complex analysis. All right, so this is let's say this is the detailed analysis, and let's go ahead and create a summary analysis, and we'll work on creating a drill down from the summary to the detailed analysis. And in the summary analysis, we can also create a graphical view. So what I'm going to do is either you can start from the scratch by to save time. What I generally do is you can save as. Right. So invoice summary analysis. So in the summary analysis, I don't want to see invoice, obviously I don't want to see invoice number, invoice, none of these things I don't want any of this. All I need is supplier name and invoice amount. I'm going to go into my analysis, and you can see that I have the supplier, party name, and an invoice amount. So this is all good. I'm going to save this one more time. So now this is a table view. And if you look at the left section all the way down, you see the views section, and you have the title, so which is the title view. And this is a table. So this is the table view. Now you can go ahead and rename it if you want to, tabular view, whatever. Right. So, you have the option of changing the name of the views. So let's go ahead and add a graphical view here. So I'm going to go and select, trusty old bar chart. You can see that, we have the bar chart here. So again, I can go ahead and change this name. Let's see, bar graph. All right. So that's that. Now for this analysis, I don't want the tabular view, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. I only need the bar graph. I also want to add like a selection step. So what I want to do is I only want to see the top 10 suppliers based on invoice amount, right? And that is a very common scenario that I've seen in projects where they say, I want to see the top 10 or top 10% or top 10 suppliers based on invoice amount, all that kind of stuff. So it is rather simple using selection steps. So once I've done this, I'll have Ankur explain what a selection step is and how is it different from the criteria that we define here. So you have this filter criteria that we have, and then you have the selection steps. All right, so what I'm going to do is apply a condition. And here you can see that all of these options. What I want is I'm going to select top 10 based on something. So the example here is top 10 based on sales. So I'm going to select keep only, so keep the top 10, and you can obviously provide the percentage, if you just want to see the top 10% of it. So top 10 suppliers based on the invoice amount. So that's the measure that we are using here. We only have, and we can use other measures, but we are going to use invoice amount as the measure. So this basically means show me or keep the top 10 suppliers based on the invoice amount. So if I click OK, you should now see that there are 10 suppliers, and it is based on the invoice amount. So Ankur, do you want to explain how a filter, the selection step is different from the filter criteria?
Sure. So criteria, so let's take a step back. So OTBI, essentially, when we are selecting fields in the criteria, the OBI server behind the scenes is creating a SQL. And as you saw in the repository, that SQL or the presentation layer to the SQL generation part is done in the BMM layer, the business modeling layer, right? So at the end of the day, a SQL is issued to the database, and then the data comes back. So anything that we put in the filter criteria, that becomes part of the SQL. So that means if I'm hitting the database and say if my data set that is being returned is 10,000 records, and as we put a filter on invoice amount greater than 1,000, that SQL condition is also passed to a database. Now I'm getting 8,000 records or 5,000 records, right? So that's basically is how you are restricting the data volume that is being returned by the database itself. That's the filter criteria. The second step that we had saw on the result page is a selection step. So this selection step is basically we are selecting a view of the user. So if you see behind the scenes, the data as it gets from the database will have same 8,000 records, but at the presentation layer level, in the OBI architecture, they have presentation layer, BI server layers. Not going into those details today, but essentially there is another layer of the server which takes care of how the graphical engine is showing all these data sets. And at that end, these selection steps are applied. So database returning 8,000 records, but then with this selection steps, I want to view only based on a certain criteria. So this selection steps will give you that data set. So as Arun has set up two top 10. So out of those 8,000 records, whatever the top 10 on that measure, those will be shown.
Thanks, Ankur. So the main difference is, even if we use the selection step, it's not going to affect the number of records that are being retrieved. That is controlled by the filter criteria. And so, we retrieve 8,000 records, and this selection step is applied on those 8,000 records that we got, and then the results are shown. So that's the difference. This limits the number of rows number of the data that we retrieve from the database, and this limits what we show on the presentation layer based on this selection step. All right, so we have two analyses that we created: supplier, so invoice summary analysis and invoice detail analysis. So now, I want to change the sort. So I want to sort it by descending. So basically, I want the results to be based on the descending option. So you can see that earlier it was all jumbled in order, but the moment I change the sort option for the invoice amount, the graphical view also is updated. All right, so let's save this. The next thing I want to do is I want to create a drill down. So I have the summary analysis. Now I want to drill down from the summary analysis into the detailed analysis that I created. So first, let me add. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on I'm going to create a filter or action link basically for the supplier. And then based on the supplier, it's going to show you the detailed analysis for that supplier. So, okay, click on the properties of the supplier, go to the interaction tab. And here I'm going to say action link. Create a new action link. All right. Click on create new action. And you have this navigate to BI content. And this is what allows you to navigate from one analysis to another analysis. So let me select that. And let's go ahead and select these detailed analysis that we created. So this is the detailed analysis. Click OK. Now you can provide a link text. So basically that is, when the user clicks on it, they'll see a the text there. So view details. Click OK. Okay, so there's another option which says do not display in a pop-up if only one action link is available at runtime. So basically what that means is I can have multiple action links. So you can say view invoice, view payment, or whatever, view supply details, whatever that details are. So you can have multiple action links for a field. If I enable this, and if I only have one action link enabled, nothing is going to pop up, no action text is going to show up. Nothing of that sort is going to happen. The moment the user clicks on it, it's going to take you to the detailed analysis or whichever analysis that you're linked to. All right, so I have this option enabled. Let me back up a little bit. You also have the option of conditionally enabling action link. So basically, you can provide a condition which says, okay, if the invoice amount is greater than so much amount of $5,000 or $10,000, you want to see those details. So you can enable the action link based on certain conditions as well. Okay, click. See. All right. So now you can see if I click on this, it's not going to work, and I'll explain why. So let's view this. All right, so I clicked on it, and you'll see that it didn't filter by the supplier, right? I mean, it just shows everything. So I clicked on this summary analysis. It took me to the detailed analysis, but it didn't filter. What I want is when I click on a specific supplier, it has to filter by that supplier. So what we're missing is on the detailed analysis, we are missing a filter condition, filter criteria. So let's go back to the detailed analysis. Criteria, and add a condition here. So basically, from the summary analysis, we are clicking on the supplier party name, and we are expecting to see the invoice details for that specific supplier. So let's add a filter, which in this case, it has to be prompted. Click OK. Let's see. So now if we go back, and hopefully this works. Let's pick Dell Inc. You can see that now it has filtered the invoices based on the supplier. So on the detailed analysis, we have added a filter condition, which is basically supplier party name is prompted. And on the summary analysis, we added the action link so that when you click on the supplier, it takes you to the detailed analysis. So that's how you link the summary analysis to the detailed analysis. And that's how you enable the filter, so that when you click on a specific field in the summary analysis, it applies that filter on the detailed analysis. And as you can see, it took us less than 15 minutes to do this. And obviously, we were explaining all this, but if we were actually doing this, it's going to take a lot less time. All right. The last thing I wanted to show is, let's go into the detailed analysis. And now we have to, what I want to do is I want to go to the invoice page, the view invoice details page in the application. So when I click on, let's say, an invoice number, I want the user to navigate to the invoice details page in the application. So I have a document that explains how you have to do that. Basically, this is an Oracle documentation, but let's go through each of these step by step. And as you can see, you have several actions that you can do: view invoice details, edit invoice, create payment, view payment, etc. If you're going to take a look at the first one, view invoice details, and there's this URL format that you have to provide, and there are 3 different parameters that you have to provide. And one of the key fields here is the invoice ID column. So first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and add the invoice ID column to the analysis. So let's go ahead and add. All right, so I added the invoice ID column here. Let's go back to the results. And you have the invoice ID column here. Now, you can hide this because you don't want the user to see invoice ID. Usually they don't prefer viewing IDs. They would prefer the invoice number, right? So I'm going to keep it for now. Let's go back to the criteria. So the idea is when you click on the invoice number, it takes you to the invoice details page. So let's go ahead and do the column properties for the invoice number and go to interactions tab. Again, create an action link. So I'll provide sales and add. Okay, so here, I believe you have to select navigate to web page. All right. And this is the format that you have to follow. So let me just copy that and paste it here. I'm going to select the URL from here for your instance. And okay, all right. So you might see, so this is a standard format. Oracle has documentation regarding this. So I'm not going to go into more details on this, but you'll see 3 parameters in this option. So at 1, at 2, and at 3. That basically means that there are 3 different parameters that is part of this URL. And you have to pass the values for those 3 different parameters. So one is what's the object type, what's the action that you're trying to perform, and the last one is the invoice ID. So let's click on define parameters and click on. All right, so we have one, which is the action type. So I'll go back to the Oracle documentation. So the object type. So object type is AP view invoice. And let's add another one. The second one is view. What's the type of action that you're trying to perform? So you're trying to view the invoice details. And the last one is the invoice ID. So let's do this. So here, I'm going to change this option to a column value. Here, it'll allow you to select the specific column. And here, we need to select the invoice ID column because that's what the URL uses to link to the specific invoice in the application. Right, so we have given the object type, which is view invoice. What's the action to be performed to view the invoice? And what's the ID that we need to pass, which is invoice ID. Now, I can make all this hidden, but let's see how it works first, and then we'll go ahead and make this as hidden. All right, so we have that enabled. Click OK and save. Let's go back to the. So now you can see that there's a link enabled for the invoice number column. When I click on that, you'll see that view invoice details. And this is the link text that I provided when I was creating the action link. All right, so let's check this out. You know what? Let me go ahead and change one item in there. Properties, interaction, edit the action link, edit action options. I'm going to select open in new window and click OK. Click. All right. Save results and view invoice details. So here you can see that it shows you what that information is. So you have the object type, which is view invoice, and the action is view, and the last one is the invoice ID, right? So you can see that 661235 is the invoice ID. So it's taking that invoice ID value for that specific invoice number, and that's what's getting passed to the URL. Right. Let's wait for it to load. I don't want to be debugging this now, but hopefully this works.
Probably your session was timed out.
Let's go back to the catalog. Do invoice detail analysis. Okay, while this is loading, there's a question from debug. Can you explain the OTBI security on how it's restricting sensitive information to user, role-based access control, and also how it's different than BI Publisher? Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. You want me to take that?
Yeah, yeah.
So the OTBI security is, I would say, in nutshell, very simple. So whatever you can do in application is what it is addressed within the OTBI side of it. So in terms of like if you have access to say a human resource capital analyst or specialist roles or GL accounting manager also, again from a functional perspective, whatever your roles are, the OTBI privileges are part of mostly those, and based on that you get access to different subject areas. How it is different from BI Publisher is in the BI Publisher you are having a direct SQL access. So you have to make sure when you are applying or creating your SQLs, the security is addressed. So there is a concept of secured views that you can leverage, or there are another method where you can apply at least one of the secured views in your exist condition at end of your code to make sure that the security will be applied. If you hit a core table directly from BI Publisher, there will be no application of security by default. And in terms of role-based access security on the OTBI side, because they are reusing or leveraging the same application roles and their privileges are part of the standard rules that Oracle publishes, the OTBI always have those security built in. So if you have data access to certain things, on the HCM side, you have security profiles. So both of those will be by default enabled on the OTBI side. But if you are creating reports on BI Publisher, then you'll have to address that as part of development.
Right. So I think there's like limited number of secured views available, right? I mean, it isn't available for all of the tables or business processes. There are only limited number of secured views available.
That's correct. So if you are building something custom, which is not using the standard, so you can like say if you are on HCM side, one recommendation is just put a additional code, add exist and person ID in one of those secured views, then the security will be applied because those views will be restricting data access to that report based on the person logged in.
Right, right. So, okay, so I got it working. So the issue was there was like a space in the, when I copied and pasted the URL, there was a space between the question mark and object type. So that's why it was not working. So, but now you can see that I can click on an invoice. Let me click on the invoice and click on execute. It'll take you to the invoice details page. Right, so we can see that information here. Anyway, so that's how easy it is to create a drill down and drill through. And obviously, we didn't show you all of the different tricks and everything that you can do. I have like a beginners tutorial series in my YouTube channel where I walk you through much more concepts in OTBI. Again, the same examples I'm showing you there. So if you want to see more on that, you can definitely check out my YouTube channel for that. So now let's go ahead and change the fact that it was showing all of those parameters to the user. So I'll go ahead and change hidden. So everything is hidden now, and click OK. And I'm going to select this option, do not display in a pop-up if only one action link is available at runtime. Right. All right, so let's start from the summary analysis and go to the detailed analysis. And from the detailed analysis, we will navigate to the so let's say I pick Dell Inc. And let's select this specific invoice. And you can see that it didn't prompt the user with that text which said view invoice details, because I enabled the option. So the moment you click on the invoice number, it takes the user to that specific invoice. All right. So that's how easy it is to create analysis like these. Again, OTBI is not to be used for extracting a huge amount of data out of the database. This is typically used for analysis purposes like these, visuals and graphical views for the business users. If you want to use a report to extract huge amount of data, then BA Publisher is the route to go. The other thing that you can do is, while we were talking about the security, is that you could create an OTBI analysis, and then you can create a BA Publisher report based on the OTBI analysis. So I'll just maybe spend 2 minutes on that, just to show you. Oh, this guy doesn't have access to that. May have to log in as a different user. But when you try to create a data model, there's an option to select whether it's based on an OTBI analysis. So you could create an OTBI analysis. When you create the BA Publisher report, you select the option to the data model to be based on the OTBI analysis. So my question to Ankur is, in that case, the security applies, right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
Initially, it is firing out the OTBI first, so you'll get secure data, and then whatever you are doing with the data on the VIP side, you'll be able to do so.
Right. So that could be a workaround of using. I don't know why you want to do that, but that's a trick. Anyway, that's all we wanted to show. We just wanted to show you how at a high level overview of OTBI and what you can do, some of the things that you can do. Obviously, we didn't deep dive into all of the features and functionality of OTBI, but the idea was to give you overview of RPD, which Ankur was explaining about the RPD, what is a subject area, and also provide you a working example of how to create an analysis. Summary, detailed, how do you drill from the summary to the detail, and from the detail, how do you navigate to the application page? You can do tons of other things in OTBI, but this is just an informational video for you guys. Thanks for all the questions. If you have any further questions, feel free to connect with me or Ankur on LinkedIn. You can also check out my videos on OTBI if you're interested to learn. If you're a beginner, if you're a business user, or if you're new to ERP, HCM Cloud, check out those tutorials. I have a step-by-step tutorial explaining OTBI and providing you the examples. All right, anything else you want to add, Ankur?
No, thank you. I guess it's been a good day and good information covered today.
Okay, yeah. Thanks, Ankur. Thanks, everyone. Have a good Sunday.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Yeah.